Well, I'm very impressed there's so many people here after lunch. We're a little late starting, but we've been told that we can have 45 minutes. It gives me great pleasure to chair this session. We've got some great people on the panel. We've had a pre-meeting, so we know what sort of issues that we'd like to bring out. I hope you're going to find it very interesting. If we get time for questions at the end, we'll do that. But what we're really looking at the moment is at fan experience, fan engagement, the use of technology, lessons, revenue. And we're very fortunate to have a mix of a user from a club, somebody working on design, and somebody running a major campaign in Qatar in 2022 and looking at the technology provision in its widest context for hosting a major event like that. What we've agreed to do is not have introductions from me, but go straight to the panelists. So David, if you don't mind, we'll start with you and we'll move on.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm Dave Cavill. I'm the president of the San Jose Earthquakes. I've just spent the last 5 years of my life basically married to Avaya Stadium in terms of getting it financed, designed, built, and launched successfully. And this year we opened in March our new stadium, $100 million. And we took a lot of risks in terms of the design and did some things kind of in an unconventional way that is something that we're really proud of because I think we've created a great stadium. And so that whole experience from everything from the entitlement process to the construction piece to the launching and marketing of the stadium, selling the naming rights to Avaya, all those things I led. And that experience is something that not only is kind of something that's been a hallmark for me, but can be a learning experience, I think, for the greater soccer community. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Thanks very much. And Sadia, on a completely different scale, tell us about Qatar.
Thank you. Thank you for having us in this panel. I'm Satya from Ooredoo, Qatar. Ooredoo is a major income and telecommunication company back in Qatar. My interest in this session, in this event, Ooredoo's interest is to learn from various experiences, learn from various arenas of the world. We would like to know how to engage fans, how to maximize from the fan experience. That'll be our interest. It's a pleasure to be here.
John?
Hi, I'm John Rhodes. I'm from HOK. I lead the Sport and Entertainment Group in London. HOK is essentially an architectural firm. We have a sort of international reach with 25 offices sort of globally. Historically, I've been involved in a wide range of sporting events. So from the Club World Cup in Abu Dhabi 2009-10 to actually delivering the British Grand Prix, so designing the circuit, the facilities at Silverstone. More recently, I've had the pleasure of actually working on the Leeds Arena, which is a multi-purpose, super fan-shaped arena, a new sort of typology or approach to delivering traditional sort of sporting and entertainment in a building. While as also at the moment we've been sort of leading the design on the Dubai World Expo, which essentially is actually a technological Olympics. So although it's not necessarily sport driven, it's very much a lot of the issues that you would address, certainly technologically with the latest thinking in stadium. So that's kind of my background.
And we were just discussing that in talking venues, we're really taking when you're looking at fan engagement, the use of technology, we're taking a bigger perspective. Satya, I think this would be a good time to come back to you. We've only got a couple of slides, but just showing what's happening around Qatar, which I think will be a scene setter. Then we'll go back to opening up discussion. So it's a good time to look at your slides now.
Yeah. So we took the fan experience not only from a perspective of arena, not only from the perspective of stadium. We took it a bit further. We called it as a fan experience ecosystem itself. So what we are looking at here is we created a principle of ubiquity. We said it's not where you watch the game. It's not how do you watch the game. It's how do you engage multiple infrastructure, multiple locations into the game. So we brought the internet devices. We brought the pressing, the village around, and we call it the entire ecosystem of a fan. So if you go to the next slide, we saw that a fan comes in from, let's say, for a tournament, for a major tournament, he comes into Qatar. How do we take him from airport or even before the airport, right on board his flight? Can he get an app which tells him his experience all the way? How about taking him the moment he lands at the airport, how we hand off things to him that will engage him more into the game? how we take him to the museums, how we take him to the stadium zone, how we take him to the fan fest. So the fan engagement or the fan experience has gone, I wouldn't say drift, but it has evolved from the stadium to a complete experience of a country itself. If you see, Qatar is planning to host a compact tournament. So in a day, a fan can watch at least 2 games during the World Cup. Yeah. If that's going to be the case, they are just 8 miles away from each stadiums. If that's going to be the case, how are we going to take them from one stadium to another? How we manage their expectation? How do we show them the Qatar experience? That's our view to it. So we took a bigger picture view of this, and that's what I want to learn from here, this panel, and I also want to see how this Soccerex events contributes to our learning.
Good, Satya. Well, we'll come back to some of those issues. I think what we'll do now, David, is go back. We were discussing earlier on about the past, where we are now, and the future. And obviously in the States, there's been a lot of use of technology, but there's a worry about, is that keeping people at home? Are we losing the sort of the dramatic feel of the match? So can you just give us a perspective of our own reflections from what's happened past, now, and where you see us going in say, 5 years from now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the reality is back in the 50s and 60s, it was far better in the US and internationally to actually attend a sporting event. You went to the event, it was the best way to see it. But then as technology evolved in the 90s and early 2000s, you had these big screen TVs you could actually watch from home, and in many ways it was better. It was easier, you didn't have to drive and park. And so what we're competing against is really the sofa and people in their homes consuming our content. And I think the risk is, unless we design our stadiums in a way to accommodate kind of the new thinking of the younger fans who want to have an experience that's different, we're going to have empty stadiums. And so I think us collectively as an organization, people who own stadiums, own properties, even own the TV rights, it's incumbent upon everyone to invest in that and make sure that we're creating a fan experience for the 21st century and beyond. And I think we've done a little bit of that in Avaya, and I think there's a lot more learning that can be done, and I'm sure everyone in this room can work towards that.
Yeah, and actually you've been working together with HOK, I believe. And
yeah, they've designed our stadium, and we work together to incorporate some different things in the stadium. We have the largest exterior bar in North America, 310 linear square feet of bar space. That's somewhere people want to come. That's better than your sofa, right? And so those are the types of things we've done to create these neighborhoods at the stadium that are truly unique, that it's not technology in terms of high tech, but it's almost technology in terms of thinking from a design perspective and being creative about how you approach things.
And John, you were talking before about some of the things that are changing in stadium design that reflect the changing use of these stadiums.
Absolutely. It is quite interesting. There is this kind of arms war between sofa versus stadium.
Yeah.
And how does that affect the building? How does that affect the way we set about a design process? And when we talk about technology, I quite like the idea of smart technology rather than an encompassing high technology. Smart technology to me is actually a combination of high technology such as cloud-based access, but also using smart thinking in sort of low technology, in sort of nimble technology, in the way that you plan buildings, in the way that you can actually approach a building with a smart idea or innovations at every stage. So if you start looking at stadiums in particular, the actual technological revolution in terms of internet and the cloud and such like, obviously has an impact on the way you plan these venues. So in some ways, you obviously need to ensure that you have the right infrastructure in place, the right server spaces, the right locations of these, the ability to obviously conduit a whole building, allow flexibility in the future to have this infrastructure in place that you can adapt over time. But it has real exciting potentials as the design process moves forward. So things such as traditionally planning a concourse where you have concessions, and the concessions, the numbers and sizes are scaled to fit the stadium capacity. If you're actually delivering food to people, you can start to reduce the numbers of those down. Have a higher quality food and beverage offer, which is actually centralized, and then deliver that to people's seats. So consequently, the actual cost of this building can be reduced down because you're reducing the concourse size and some of the technical requirements in the immediate public areas. And that's very exciting. It helps in terms of reduced cost, helps in terms of expanding the quality of the offer, of the food and bev, again, competing with the sofa. But at the same time, it means that the way you can adapt these spaces that historically were used for concessions can be used for other things. It can be more flexible spaces, relaxing areas that you can spend time. So a very different experience in the future.
So some of it's physical, isn't it?
Yeah, and we did that at Avaya. You know, we actually incorporated, I don't know how popular they are here in the UK, but gourmet food trucks. So we have 12 gourmet food trucks that's set up actually in a predetermined area that we designed into the stadium, and you can have everything from Vietnamese food to curries to, you know, lobster rolls to Hawaiian ice, whatever you want, and it creates a totally new way to have food service, and it's far cheaper. We didn't have to build $2 or $3 million worth of buildings and kitchens and all this kind of stuff, and our fans actually prefer it. And so that's the type of, you know, thinking and creativity that we were able to bring to the project working with HOK.
So that's sort of a business model. And then what about, let's talk a bit about the role of technology. We were talking about the fan engagements and getting lost in the technology, too much technology around, not enough technology. You know, where are we in your reflection?
Well,
I'll go along the panelists. I'm saying I'll ask you what your reflections are.
You know, I think, you know, technology for just technology's sake is kind of worth nothing. So I think it has to be for the end user. So if you're going to have Wi-Fi and you're going to have iBeacons and you're going to have all these snazzy things in the stadium, it has to actually serve some need for the customer, whether it's taking out friction. So you have the commerce piece, and we use an app, the Avaya Stadium app, so you can actually just have a barcode and just get right into the stadium. You don't need to actually have a ticket, which is an easy thing. Or whether it's social. I mean, that's what a lot of fans want to see now. They want to be able to post something to Instagram or Twitter or do a Snapchat or whatever it is, and have not only the infrastructure to support that, but have it in one location so you don't have to open like 7 different apps on your phone. So all those things need to be done in a way that's actually additive to the experience. And I think that's where, you know, us as an actual property owner come in terms of tailoring that experience, providing apps and providing ways to achieve that.
Yeah. In fact, what we are doing, we are trying to explore this opportunity with other tourism authorities. We are working with museums. We are working with stadium owners to say that whatever I mentioned earlier, as soon as the fan arrives, can we give them a single app, you know, the wayfinding, like you said, the ticketing, like you said, the food and beverage, or even if he goes off, visit somebody, visit any other places of interest. How we bring into a single app, like you said, we don't want multiple. The fan does not need multiple apps. I need to see a place. He's coming to see a place. He's coming to see an event. He needs to celebrate every bit of it. He doesn't want to be, like we talked about, he doesn't want to be logged in the screen all the time. Right. Yeah, that's the interest, that's the kind of ecosystem we are putting together.
But we were talking about the need for resilience as well when you have these systems, where, you know, if there are payments and all your personal data.
Yes.
We talked a lot about Wi-Fi in venues. Can they ever provide the capacity that we need and externally, et cetera? So I guess in your case, you've just got to track this very carefully for 2022 to make sure if these are the aspirations that they can really be delivered. Yeah. Because there's a lot of dependencies on that.
It's a very tough target. It's a very long shot, but it is worth taking that risk of reaching out to all government entities, finding out how can I integrate their currencies, how can I integrate their ticketing, or for that matter, how they spend the hospitality, how we bring them into a single platform. That's going to be a long shot, but it's worth taking it.
So you might find there's a bit of a queue of people stood out the door waiting to speak to you when you walk
Guys
in.
are welcome.
I've just got the perfect answer for you. It's on the shelf and it's proven. But in fact, John, you've obviously got to consider all this sort of stuff in terms of the infrastructure you're putting into these venues, haven't you?
Absolutely. I think what's interesting in Qatar in particular is that the sporting event is starting to drive the wider urban environment. So the actual smart city technology is being pushed forwards by the event.
Yes.
So, the infrastructure is being put in place for that event. But it will affect actually the city in the long term. The legacy in the city will be that it will be a very modern city. It will be a very sustainable city because it will be leveraging these technologies that are put in place from the event.
Yeah, even for Qatar, we are creating a smart city platform for Lusail. That's a smart city evolving in the northern side of Qatar. We are putting together a command and control center, a smart city platform altogether. At some point of time, we even had an idea, can we go and extend this to the precincts? Because Qatar is building a precincts, not a stadium. Yep. They're building fan fest, the training grounds, everything around a stadium. So they call it the precinct. So can we extend it to a precinct? That is one idea we are still toying with. We are exploring on those lines also.
And you've sort of scratched at that, haven't you, David, with your, can you just tell us a bit about your accidentally, purposely designed to open a stadium and what you've done to enhance the use of that when there's not a match taking place?
Yeah, so the way we designed Avaya Stadium was actually to be able to expand it. So it's actually in a U, and there's one side of the stadium that basically one stand that's actually not completed. And on that side, we actually have the huge video board and then the scoreboard bar I was talking about earlier. And the nice thing about that is we took the area behind it, we put grass there and some concrete area, and it's a multi-purpose area that we call the epicenter because we're the earthquakes. And that's a location for the food trucks. We have a video board on the back so we can have World Cup viewing parties. When the U.S. women were in the World Cup, we had 6,000 people out there on the grass in a great kind of festival environment. And it was really kind of like a village green for San Jose. And you know, San Jose is a community in Silicon Valley that there really is no center point where people can necessarily gather, unlike a larger city like London or San Francisco. And so we're trying to fill that void with Avaya Stadium, and we're having a lot of success with it. And I think it shows how a building, if designed correctly and programmed right, can really enhance the quality of life for the people in that community.
And you're building fan loyalty. Let's be clear,
Absolutely.
it's driving extra revenue to the club, more participation.
More events. You know, I have this stadium we own that we financed ourselves. I want to have as many events as I can to push the utilization up, to get people used to coming to the venue and just having a great experience there.
And what about that social? You're saying even you have a social gathering there occasionally?
All the time. I mean, we have like Thursday, almost like a pub crawl type thing where people come and,
crawl the way around this long bar.
You can. It's like a progressive around the place. So
sounds good when
so
we're coming.
anytime.
But any thoughts on that, John?
Yeah, I think what is interesting, obviously sort of leveraging the technology side of things, is the way that with technology, you can actually increase the sort of sphere of influence of a stadium or a sporting facility within that community or within that urban environment. So the idea that suddenly the stadium becomes the centre of that community is wonderful. But the way that using the technology itself, it can integrate with the transportation systems. You can actually look at the way that the stadium can be used as part of your sort of response plans to any emergencies and such like, because you have that technology in place as a community facility. So I think there's some real interesting things there in terms of urbanism, in terms
That'll
of
be
the
a good
role
takeaway for Qatar, actually, like I was talking about. It's a compact, it's going to be a compact tournament altogether. How we move people, the transportation, how we use technology to, especially for the crowd management during large format tournaments, that'll be a good takeaway for us.
Yeah, and so I think the role of the stadium is very much changing more towards this community aspect, as it were.
Being at the heart of community. And Satya, fan parks and the rest, is that going to be in these plazas or are you going to have dedicated?
Absolutely.
I think so.
It's going to be, so it's where he's going.
The whole precinct is going to have that, the precinct like I was talking about has every component of it, be it a mall, be it a metro and everything. So everywhere, let's say the fans, like how you touched about fans watching it outside the arena, can be a great fan zone by itself, fan fest by itself. So that is one area we can leverage from, we can learn from our stadiums.
Yeah, and have you actually gone beyond the Village Green concept? Do you have any other sort of arrangements for expanding the fan base?
Well, the nice thing is that Avaya Stadium is part of a larger, about $500 million development in North San Jose, and so we took an area that was an old tank factory and very industrial, and an area where really no one gathered, and we've created kind of an entertainment and media zone and recreation zone. And so there's community soccer fields, Avaya Stadium, 1.5 million square feet of commercial, hotel. That's all being built around it. And that creates, one, it does create a lot of opportunities, but also there's a lot of new stakeholders involved. You got to get a lot of new people to the table and make sure that they're committed to the vision of the whole property and that kind of neighborhood that you're creating. And for us, it's great because people come from all over the Bay Area and come there as a destination. And we have transit, we have Caltrain, we'll eventually have the BART, which is the major metro in the Bay Area, and all those things will enhance the value of that location over time.
Want to comment, guys, on that?
Well, I think if you take that as a view, the flexibility associated with these venues becomes fundamentally important. So you're becoming the centre point of the community, and that can be it could be anything. So using the infrastructure, using the design to create a flexible venue on every level is quite exciting.
Yeah, so we're moving away from the concept. It's a sports venue, a big lump of concrete that sits there and not used that regularly, to being at the heart of the community.
Yeah, and and maybe that on an educational basis. I think what's quite interesting, certainly with the Formula One, that there's very much a drive to enhance the IT connections, the sort of the marine network through to the the local infrastructure. And you can see it's not, it's not unforeseeable that in the future, stadiums and sporting complexes will actually become these IT hubs. And around
Big data
them,
centers.
like data
infrastructure
centers and that sort of. So the urbanism around it will actually start to be, determined by that factor.
Yeah.
So the ability to deal with large amounts of information in real time. So, you might get, small sort of hedge fundy, trading guys, stuff like that, creeping into a stadium environment.
Like an innovation hub.
Yeah, innovation hubs, that kind of thing. So I think the urbanism associated with it is definitely moving in response to some of these issues.
In fact, one of the legacy usage of one among the 8 to 12 stadiums Qatar is planning, to my limited knowledge, what they are also trying to do is, during the legacy value, post the tournament, can we convert them into a dwelling units?
All right. Okay.
I mean, that's an interesting concept because legacy value is very important because some of the tournaments have taught us, or at least what we have observed is that post the large format tournaments, it turns into ghost towns also.
Yeah, you can be careful about that.
Yeah. So how we use the legacy value of it, that's something we are also
And
touching
again,
upon.
designed in right from the outset.
Yeah.
And just touching on a slightly different angle, I know we've been really focusing on fan engagement, fan experience, and the revenue it comes to. One of the points I was surprised when you talked to me on, David, about the security side of it. You said that actually using information at times, not just to make it easier for people, actually, but at times the security status changes, and apparently your operations change as well. I wonder if you can just touch on that.
Yeah, so
Sometimes
sometimes
this have an impact on Qatar as well.
Yeah, and this is where you're getting all the different stakeholders involved, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have a certain security posture in terms of bag checks, wanding, things like that about getting into the stadium, and that can actually create a different perimeter of the stadium depending on event, the opponent, threat level, things like that. And so that can change up to 24 hours before the game. And so with the Avaya Stadium app, it can notify you, hey, you know what? You're going to have to enter through C and not A because of this. And that can be such a proactive way to let people know and then engage with the new conditions around the venue, as opposed to just showing up and not knowing. And so it allows you to prepare better. It allows you to actually have a more coordinated integration across all your different stakeholders. And I think it just makes for a more efficient stadium operation.
Not irritating people by being surprised by a change.
Yeah, and if we didn't have that technology, if we didn't have a cloud-enabled stadium, if we didn't have the app built in and connecting with our fans, you wouldn't be able to do that. And so those are clear ways where the technology is easing the experience, taking out the friction, and having a better experience for everybody. Yeah.
I mean, we've used it, extensively when we started to plan the Dubai World Expo. Queuing is a big issue. So if people are queuing to getting certain pavilions, it becomes it's not a great experience, especially on hot days. So you're actually knowing where everyone is, you can move people around, or you can entertain them while they're queuing. So you can actually put strategies in place to ensure, with this smart technology, knowing where people are, knowing what they're looking to do, to actually ensure that their experience is tailored and is immediate.
The other thing we do on that is that you actually get data after the game that you can analyze. So you can see someone's logged onto the Wi-Fi system, you can see kind of what part of the stadium they've been in. Yeah. So we know that if you're a season ticket holder in section 101, here are the parts of the stadium that you actually are in. And that's pretty interesting because you can program concessions, portable locations. You have all these revenue generating opportunities connected with that, that in the past you never would know. It'd be very anecdotal. And so this data that comes from having the app, having the system, really goes a long way in making better business decisions.
I think that's one place where, as a telecom operator, we find that the big data, a lot of data collection, if I stack up after a banking company or insurance company, telecom organizations have a very good place in collecting as much as data possible. Yeah. So in terms of taking this, converting into a meaningful information and feeding it back to the fans, saying that, like you just talked about, the crowd management, how you divert them, how you bring them ahead of the game, how do you tell them, probably you're seated in this zone, it's good you start 10 minutes late or 10 minutes early. I think telecom operator has a very good place, and we are learning from multiple areas on this area.
So really what we're saying is if you can have a day off, you lead a busy life, you want everything to be calm. You want to come into the stadium just in time, get to your seat, buy what you want to buy, take a break at the right time, get the merchandising you need, not queue up to leave the stadium. So it's a big theme all the way through this, isn't it? Don't queue anywhere.
So that he doesn't miss all the 5 goals we talked about.
Yeah, John did confess he drinks more when he gets excited. And he said there is a fine balance between when you're drinking more, what needs to happen after that as well. That's why you're in the design side of it, I think.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there is something inherently stressful about watching your team play. And like, you know, can you make the rest of the stress disappear and focus on that particular
There is when you're
stress?
watching Scotland play,
Yeah.
that's for sure. Yeah. Or predictable, perhaps, more thing. And actually moving away a little bit from the general use into some of the specifics. I mean, there was this debate I mentioned to you before about Wi-Fi. A lot of things depend on Wi-Fi and forms of communication. Are you looking at 5G, is it right?
Yeah, we are trying to test waters with it. In some of the events, we are also trying to see how we can enable the second screen experiences. We are finding out partners in the market, technology partners in the market who can bring that second screen experience. And most importantly, this 5G technology will be mostly available across Europe or Americas by 2020. So we want to see how we can use the same, we want to learn rather, how we can bring it for the 2022 fans. So that is one area we are exploring.
And how are you feeling about that? Confident that you can?
Oh yes, we are far more confident. Recently, when we hosted an event, ITU event back in Doha, we had one of our technology partners showcasing how the upload, download data that can be done at a 5G speed. We did try.
In these high density environments?
In a high density environment.
With all the problems of, well, again,
Yes,
I don't
we
know.
are talking about at least 60 to 70,000 fans in a stadium.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So, but it's too early for us to say what is
Yeah.
in it. We are also learning. I'll just keep it that way at this moment.
Yeah, and there is this boundary between the physical design that people like John work on and actually getting that infrastructure right, isn't it?
Sorry.
No, it's a question for both of you, actually.
What we are doing now is we are working with all the stadium owners. We reach out to them purposefully to say that, how are you guys coming up with these stadium design, especially high definition Wi-Fi, or do you want resilient connectivity to the stadium? How are you planning broadcast, high definition broadcast? Today, we have already tested in 2014 the 4K solution, right? How do you plan 8K solution? What kind of data pipe you need from the stadium to enable that fan experience? How do you bring about those technology right at the edge of the arena? So we voluntarily reach out to stadium owners to help them not only build their Wi-Fi solution, the in-built link services, the DAS solutions. We're reaching out to them voluntarily.
That'll be interesting to see how that goes. I'm going to ask you in a moment what it's like retrospectively catching up. But if John, over to you, what's your reflections on these changes?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the way you design stadiums, obviously you need to have the flexibility of the future. And what's quite interesting, the projection in 5 years' time is, you obviously have to escalate the
big
people's
change.
usage
Yeah.
because people are only going to use technology more. So it's an exponential challenge that you have.
Yeah.
So I think in design, it's really creating that flexibility because we don't know the unknowns of the future. We just need to create the framework where you can actually adapt the solutions. Without, as we talked about earlier, not basing everything purely on technology. It needs to be a combination of smart technology, high technology, and low technology together, so that you have a resilient system or resilient strategies that can adapt to the innovation as these things develop.
And it's kind of hard sometimes.
How do you cope with that?
Well, it's interesting because we work with Avaya to build out the Wi-Fi system at Avaya Stadium, and you don't know when you have the first game how many people are going to use it. So it's hard to say. So do you build it? We have 18,000 seat stadium. Do you build it for 12,000 people to be on concurrently? 8,000, 4,000? So we built for around 10 or 11, and we've been having around 8. So that worked. So the first game, you're kind of crossing your fingers. You're hoping it's not like 13 or something crazy. But we kind of had a little bit of extra capacity in there because obviously over time it'll probably go up.
But the usage change, that's the trouble.
It can go up. Yeah, it can go up. I mean, luckily there's other forms of, obviously, cellular and things like that people can connect to, 4G and stuff like that. So it's a mix, and we have a DAS system too. And so you need a multiple kind of resilient points, as we said earlier, to actually support the infrastructure. Because if you're going to build all this stuff on top of it, if you're going to have a great app, if it's going to be used for your ticketing, if it's going to be used to share videos on Instagram and Vine, all this stuff, it's got to work. And people are going to, especially we're in Silicon Valley, fans expect that. That's a baseline expectation. So for us, when we went into planning the stadium, we knew we had to have a Wi-Fi system, we had to have connectivity, and we had to be able to provide that baseline for fans. And we've achieved it to date, but we're going to continue to need to invest and to create the flexibility that maybe someday you need to support it for 18,000 for every fan.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
With more data.
With more data, exactly.
I think that learning we also picked up when we were, our leadership was ideating as to how we prepare ourselves for a tournament of large formats is that let's keep the innovation at the edge, let's keep the infrastructure at the core. So build up the infrastructure, so the innovation, any kind of platform, any kind of innovation, any kind of technology innovation can always plugged and played. But keep the infrastructure, keep the core infrastructure ready.
And you were saying, Stadia, just a very brief overview, you're putting a lot of resilience into your
Yes,
venues,
we are.
aren't you, in Qatar? Just mention that briefly.
Each and every stadiums that is there across in Doha, we are planning, at least what we are ideating internally is to give multiple connectivity through multiple central office routes, so that it doesn't affect, it doesn't affect be it the fan experience, be it the broadcasting experience, and so on. That is one view, and we are also trying to connect all the stadiums into a single network, so that at any point of time, a broadcaster has to just pick up from one end, and they can send it to any part of the world. So they don't need OB vans, they don't need the satellite uplink. They prefer what's done and tested in Europe. We are trying to see how we can put that across for Doha. We are planning to host at least 200 to 300 odd games in the next 8 to 10 years. So if that's going to be the case, how we enable such a fat pipe in any stadium venues, that's something we're still thinking through.
And John, in HOK, do you have now people that are really right on the edge of this future technology and its implications on design? Because obviously you've worked together, and so far you've had this, what seems to be a good technology roadmap. I mean,
Absolutely. I mean, we're quite lucky in a way that although we have a very strong sports specialist team, we also do other technology buildings as well. So recently we've been designing the Crick Institute in central London, which is a 600 million laboratory. So you're using the latest technology there, and the ability to share some of the learning process from that with the wider sports group is always quite exciting.
so there's a cross transfer.
Absolutely, yeah. So that in itself is interesting, looking at from trading floors how they're starting to operate and how that will actually turn into entertainment-based processes is quite interesting.
And so you do have a role in the club now, looking at a technology lead and commercialization of it. Is that something that's changing in emphasis within the club?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we realized that wasn't something we really had that expertise in-house.
Yeah.
And so luckily we have this great partnership with Avaya as the naming partner. Obviously their name's on the building. They are driving the technology roadmap, and they're bringing other partners to the table and enabling us to do things that we never thought were possible because of kind of the infrastructure they built out. And so, we're building a version 2.0 of the app that has 10 times more features than the first, and we can keep scaling that. And a lot of that's being driven out of our partner, Avaya. And for us, as a smaller organization, I don't have really the capability to build out a whole IT or technology arm.
Yeah,
and so it's a great way to kind of leverage your strengths and your partners to create a better experience.
And it is driving more revenue, the use of technology, would you say,
Oh,
apart from this fan experience?
I think, one, it's creating more avid fans, fans more connected to our brand, and people, especially the younger generation in America, is so focused on soccer, and it's a differentiator. If they go to an American football game, they won't have the opportunity to potentially have some of those interactions. And so it's a differentiator and something that's actually really important for our business.
So it now has to happen. Is that the message we're taking away? If you look into the future as well, that whatever we call it, however we use it, that role of technology is going to be there. Whether it be all the way from safety, security,
I think it's a
ease
baseline.
of passage, a baseline. It has
Yeah,
to be
I
there.
think so.
But don't get lost in the technology. Is that the other message?
Well, I think the thing is that it's a baseline. You have to have it, but you don't want to deploy it in a way that ruins the experience. I still love about soccer that you sit there and you're mesmerized by the action and you're waiting for a goal or a great play and everyone's watching the game. And that's a really unique part of the sport. We don't want that ruined by, I need to check something on my phone or whatever. We want people engaged in the sport and what happens on the pitch. That's the content. That's what our whole business is. We just want the actual second screen or the technology to make the whole experience more effortless and seamless.
But you have also moved some of your premium seats closer to the pitch, all right?
We do. We
So
have.
you can
Yes.
smell the turf.
You can. I mean, you better watch out. The ball will come hit you. So yeah.
Certainly if you're on your second device.
Yes, no doubt.
Some would call that justice.
Maybe. It might be.
Guys, we've got about 10 minutes left on the panel. I know that we've been told to be fairly strict about it. What I'm going to do now, if you don't mind, John, heads up, I'm going to start with you and then work this way down. I'd ask the guys that are on to think about any sort of takeaway points. It doesn't matter, they can be off-piste or whatever. But any sort of final thoughts you just want to put on the table that would be of use to the audience about either the use of technology, fan engagement, a trend, a lesson, and then if we've got time, we'll see if we can take a couple of quick questions. But over to you, John.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is technology is giving the fan the opportunity to take centre stage. So obviously you have the event going on, but the fan is very much more part of that event itself. And that engagement is there. So in some ways, that affects your approach to the architecture in itself. It means that the fans are taking centre stage. Does the architecture need to be as complex or as dramatic in some ways? You want to focus on the fan itself. And the other aspect is the way that you can drive revenue from that interaction, and the way that you can have more complex and more diverse naming rights deals. So you have your primary naming rights partners, but you can have a much more flexible secondary and tertiary naming rights associations that you can use technology to mobilize. And then, of course, that comes into actually, you have all this technology, but you need the content to actually, put on this technology so people will, continue to use it after the game, after the match, before the match and such like. And that in itself is quite fascinating in how, how do you start to leverage content within the facilities that we're designing? So we need to create more theatre in the way that the players come in, the players access, which is unique to people within that stadium, and that you can actually download or access to this specific community is quite interesting. So that combination of content and engaging the fans together is I think, the sort of exciting areas of design.
So you need to see it a bit more strategically integrated, give it more priority. It's no longer about just playing the match then.
Absolutely. I think it's, what essentially, sport, like it or not, is in some ways entertainment. And that entertainment, needs to extend itself into the culture of your life as it does nowadays. So the ability to, leverage that content for financial reasons or to support the club, but also to keep the community together is quite interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Setier, the future.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you've got a fixed deadline, so it's, unlike everybody else, you've got to be pretty clear. It's going to be there
yes. I'm taking this view from two segments. I'm seeing this, the B2C, that is business to consumer, and business to business itself. For business to consumer, it's definitely we want to see the complete fan engagement, the complete fan ecosystem. That's one thing we are trying to explore. That we are having a lot of workshop with our technology partners. That's the B2C angle. From the B2B angle, we are looking at, I would put it this way: data is the new oil. Yeah.
Yeah, good
What
metaphor.
if we build the infrastructure for this data to be generated from multiple systems across, and how we can enable the B2B businesses that are going to be housed in Qatar for, in the lead up to the tournament. How we can help them give those data so that they can, through the secured and most responsible way, how they can use the data to enhance the fan experience or the Qatar experience. That's the view. We are working with Supreme Committee. We have a lot of innovation workshops with them on an ongoing basis.
And the exciting thing, as you said before, it is a city view, not just simply that
Yes.
footprint immediately around the stadium.
Yeah, it's going to be a journey. The moment they board the flight for the World Cup.
Yeah, and it's a legacy.
Or a large format tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. As I say, I'm sure we'll
Thank
want
you.
to talk to you about that. David, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think one thing, and I've seen this in launching the stadium this year, is that I think it's really important to take some chances and to take some risks when you're trying some new technologies and things like that. It's not always going to work, but we did a lot of things this year with fan engagement walls and having social streams and different video boards and things like that. And some of the times it really didn't work very well, and it was hard to deploy, and it was a little buggy. But what we found is that if we didn't try a lot of these things and kind of push the limit a little bit and get the feedback from fans like, hey, I hate this or I like this, then you don't really make any progress. And so I think a lot of times teams, organizations, property owners are just too conservative about some of this stuff. And that's why I think that you don't see the innovation in this industry that we see every day around us in Silicon Valley. And so I think if there was one point I would want to make is that hopefully, and more people would take some of those risks and know that, hey, they're not all going to work, but it's okay, because in the end, you're actually going to have a better experience. Customers know things go wrong. They'll actually appreciate that the new things are being tried. And in the end, you'll have a better product.
Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for that. We are gonna take some questions. If you are interested in asking, what I'm gonna do, if a number of hands go up, I'm gonna take about 3 questions in one go, and then guys, you can pick it from what you want. So if you have a question, please put your hand up and a microphone will be delivered. Simply say who you are if you wouldn't mind. It's kind of nice if you can stand up so we can see you. Just while that's happening, just to give you a bit of a heads up, say thank you very much indeed to the panel. It's been good to talk to you before on this. It's been a really, really interesting insight from different perspectives. If you are interested in this sector, a couple of comments. My company, Major Events International, we've been working with Soccerex now for a number of years. Dave and I have been very keen to build on this theme. If you think this whole area around venue technology and fan engagement is of interest, please give the Soccerex team some feedback, because we'd like to build on this for future years. Date for your diary, 27th of October. We're running an event in collaboration with some other people on the same subject, so this is a continued dialogue, and some members of the MEI team are around here today. If you'd like to know more about that, give us a shout. So just hands up if anybody wants to ask a question or make a comment. There's a hand at the back right as you're looking at it from the rear. Thanks.
Yeah, hi. This is Marcus Leonhardt from Solid Management. Dave, just a question on the cost versus the revenue you create having the technology. So obviously there was a cost related to all the stuff you put into your stadium and the app that was programmed. What are the revenue streams and how do those two compare to each other?
Good question.
Yeah, well, it actually worked out great for us because we brought a partner to the table in Avaya that underwrote the technology costs. So I didn't actually have to spend any money on that technology piece. I found a great partner who was willing to take commercial rights, which were the naming rights, which were still, obviously there was a rights fee, but they were also understood the importance of investing in the technology. And so then beyond that, I'm getting all sorts of new inventory, whether it's sponsor of the app, our social media walls, all these different things have sponsor opportunities and new commercial rights that we can sell to new partners. And so for us, it's since the basis is kind of zero, it's all kind of gravy. And so it's been a nice way to structure it where you're not taking a big risk financially, but you're getting additional revenue streams on top of it.
And are other technology providers coming to you and saying, can we build on that as well?
Yeah, that's kind of what's happening right now. And so, people have come out to the stadium, they enjoy the experience, they know the technology is working and the Wi-Fi and everything, and they're like, hey, how do we build on top of that? And so we're going to be launching kind of the next generation, which is probably 2 to 3 additional technology partners over the next year. Wow. They're going to build on top of what we've done with Avaya. And Avaya likes that because it's a great way to showcase their technology and how it can work with other partners. And for us, it brings new partners to the equation and obviously is additive to the fan experience.
There's your technology innovation hub.
Yeah.
Other questions from the floor? Any hands? I can't see at the moment. If that's the case, we've been very good coming in 2 minutes early from the end of the session. Any final questions, comments? Well, thank you very much indeed, and I hope that you found it interesting. I think the guys will be around for a little bit if you'd like to ask any questions on a one-to-one basis, or I'm sure through the appropriate channels we can get you connected. But thank you very much for coming along. I hope you found it of interest.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you.